Hello, everyone, and welcome to One-Liners, a series centered around key influencers and players within the performance marketing space and community. My name is Joey Liner of Liner Connections. I am, if you don't mind, please like or subscribe my LinkedIn page dedicated for the podcast, as well as my YouTube page that will help me continue to grow my presence. I appreciate that. So today I have a very special guest. One that has just continued to rise to the top as far as example, leadership, thought leadership, execution. I'm so excited to speak with Manny Zuccarelli today from QuoteVelocity. Manny, say hello.
Thank you, brother. Joey, thank you for having me on, and I look forward to what we'll be covering today, my friend. Thank you.
Awesome, man. So Manny and I, welcome. And Manny and I, we met at what I consider today probably one of the most impactful business dinners that I've ever been to, and I've bring up this dinner multiple times because the um, the quality of participants that join this dinner is just, to me, I've created multiple relationships from. The only disadvantage to this dinner was it was a long table, so it was hard for you to have multiple conversations. But it was Adam and Harrison's CEO dinner at the Lead Generation World in 2023, and Manny and I got to meet. It was January, actually, out in San Diego here, and we kind of clicked and hit it off right away, and when we've kind of been able to stay in touch on throughout the business world. We're all so busy, but just been able to stay in touch and for me to witness and start following and see what he's been able to accomplish. I was like, man, I gotta get him on the show and be able to. I want him to share his story because it's truly amazing. And so, Manny, again, thanks for coming on today, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, and it hasn't been without its pain points, that's for sure. And
Well,
shared
yeah,
pain. Yeah,
and
not
we'll
just
talk about
myself,
that. I'm sure,
ultimately.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's part of life, part of evolution. So let's go
Yeah.
back in the time machine because again, it's performance marketing. Um, how did you tell me your story? Like, how did you get into performance marketing?
Yeah.
What was your career path?
Yeah. So it's funny. I was 14, 15 years old when sort of AOL was really still a thing. And really a growing, yeah, I know, a growing thing. And a friend of mine who was a software developer and already involved in online marketing, he came over to my house. We literally were kids, right? And he shows me software that he's running on AOL, and it's basically it's like a chat bot marketing various products and services and stuff. So he shows me this, and he just like throws it on my computer. And at the time, there were affiliate networks. They were much different than they are today. But he puts it on my computer. He's like, here, this thing, just like run it, and it'll just like make money. He just like leaves. It was weird. It was bizarre. But he walks out, and then he showed me sort of what it was plugged into, what it was advertising, how the whole thing worked. And so I wake up the next day. There's like maybe $50 in my account, in like this affiliate account, and I'm like, this is real. Like this thing actually just did this. And so I'm gonna fast forward, but what ended up happening was at the time you didn't really have remote servers. You sort of had a scenario where you would buy like these small PCs and you'd connect them all to like a KVM switch on like a single monitor. So you'd kind of like bounce between machines. And so what I did was I just kept running this thing, and then you can only really run one instance of it per machine. So I had to get more machines to sort of keep duplicating, and it was like running threads across multiple servers. It was probably extremely inefficient. And then I ended up with all this at my bedroom. My bedroom became like a hot box. So then that kind of evolved over time into more sophisticated marketing software and email marketing software. And then we spent a lot of time, really absorbed in the mortgage space, which then pretty much imploded. And so I lost everything in 08, 09. And everything we were doing was very central to the mortgage industry. And
Yep.
so our clients were gone. That entire vertical was gone for a while.
Yep.
There were some that sort of survived it throughout, but we didn't. And so from there, I went into building a network that was focused on essentially producing software for affiliates that allowed them to scale their operations faster and their marketing campaigns faster. And I ran that until really until I started QV. So
Wow.
call it right around, the end of 2017 was when I made the decision, like, you know, this company that we've built is grown. I've had a great time work on it. I love the people that I built it with. I'm still very close with everyone. But I I was getting kind of bored. Really wanted to build something with more of like an enterprise focus, which really wasn't the focus of the team. That operated more, and it's funny because the term I hear more often now, and people call them like a lifestyle business, right? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of like this business
Yep.
support how I want to live, or I just wanted more. I wanted to build a company where people had real careers, where I was in closer contact with my team members. Um, and that business didn't really offer that. Like it wasn't really going to grow into something enterprise. So, you sort of look at the early evolution as sort of an online affiliate advertiser, trying to sort of grow up in my early 20s through the mortgage era, and then getting kicked in the face really bad, which for me was probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I remember my father at the time telling me that he's like, you're gonna look back on this. It's gonna be good that you went through this. And my dad was very
Yes.
stoic. And sometimes I wish I adopted more of that stoic demeanor. I think people, they see that in me and they think that, but a lot of times there's just a bunch of noise going on upstairs. So, and looking back on it, I think it gave me a good sense of humility that I think has become extremely important as this company has grown, right? So, and we'll get into it later and sort of what numbers in general, but it, yeah, I think that has kept me in a way just consistently grateful for where we are, very much realizing our mortality. Like I don't
Yeah.
take anything for granted, and I don't in any way run around assuming that we're magicians. Like I know this is all like the result of hard work, and everyone's hard work. So yeah,
Yeah, dude,
I'm
that financial crisis. What's that?
yeah. No, I said that was a long-winded response, but I kind of had to merge it in my
No, it's
head.
great. It's great. I
Yeah.
mean, you like you said, you have to go through and face major adversity. And, in 2000, for us at Double Positive, when Sean and we had such a big growth rate in mortgage too, and it just kicked us right in the gut overnight. We had to diversify pretty quickly into other verticals, but it took time, and it was a big lesson learned, that diversification is key. And for us to be able to live through that together, it made us stronger. So in 2018, so you talked about it, kind of the reasons why you wanted to go out and advance your career, right? Advance to beyond what you were doing. What made you want to actually start lead generation in 2018 with QuoteVelocity?
Because we had done it previously. And it's funny, Rich, who's on our team now, he he was really kind of pushing me towards it. And honestly, I wanted to go into nutrition. I'd been studying nutrition. I love nutrition. Um, Health and wellness just a big part of my life. It's so, from a young age, and especially now, I lost both of my parents to cancer. So like, it's just a very much a integral part of the domain that I operate in, and sort of so I really wanted to go into nutrition, and I was considering launching a nutritional supplement line at the time. I actually had done that previously, and it had worked pretty well, but we just didn't scale it because I was distracted by other priorities. And Rich was nudging me. He's like, you did really well in this last time, and you have a good aptitude for this. But I had been so out of the space that calls was totally new to me. Like that wasn't
Yeah,
a thing. I mean, it was. It was, but not like it is now.
right.
Like it was,
Absolutely.
right? Like it was mostly data back then. So, um, I was apprehensive at first, but then I was like, you know what? I looked at the space. A good friend of mine had gone through an acquisition, and he was also pushing me. He had been in the lead gen space. He'd been pushing me to as well. And he's like, look, I could see this being an area you'll do well in. And I got started. And honestly, it wasn't easy. I think a lot of people in this space are so used to kind of kicking things off and hitting the ground running right away because maybe they came from a company that was already, like, they've already been immersed in this. I was very distant. And when we think of affiliate marketing or just online advertising, it's just so broad. Like you could be in e-com. I mean, you could be in lead gen. Like there's so much that you could do there. And this was a totally different space. And I didn't have deep relationships in this new call space. And we were a lead gen team at a Boca Raton, which is probably like the least desirable place to be if you're going to start a lead generation company, try to have a decent reputation. But no, dude, but knowing that actually, like made me immediately focus on like doing everything right, because I felt
Yes.
like we were constantly going to be scrutinized.
Yes.
And honestly, seriously, so I'm like, I could have been in Jupiter or like Miami and I would have been fine, but I was in Boca, which is like the worst. So
Another lead gen guy from Boca.
horrible. So I took the compliance side of things so serious from the beginning, because I knew, like, if we want to survive and this is supposed to be a real company, like we have to behave like one and probably go above and beyond in everything. And it did play out and pan out well for us later. But yeah, so I got QV started. It took us a while to kind of get our bearings rolling, and then Rich came on board. Joe, our CMO, really, our chief business officer, came on board and really helped grow the media team. Rich really helped significantly with building out the insurance products, and so everything kind of came together. Melissa came on board, and it really, like, everything started to form and kind of come together, which, along with other market factors, I think it was a lot of stars aligning. Hard work, great people, good timing. Plans were far more desirable in Medicare space. We can kind of dive into that after, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think large, it's sort of, we gained some good momentum, and we just didn't take it for granted. I think if what I see a lot of is, I talked about this on with Adam, is like, when you start a company, you're like an infant, and you're like fragile, and it's like, you treat the business as, you look at every last detail of every last little thing every day, like every call, every conversation, every email. I mean, I would hope so. Like, it's so important to you. And then because of that behavior, over time, you start to see glimmers of hope and things occur, and like positive activity. Now, what ends up happening is that momentum starts to build, and you kind of go from being an infant to a teenager, and then you think you got everything figured out, and like nothing could stop you. And I think, like, I love the confidence that comes with that, but it has to be coupled with a level of, like, just humility and productive paranoia that's like, hey, we could also just lose all this shit right away. Like, it can just
Yeah.
go. And
Yeah.
that comes back to where I was in my early 20s, where you know, I'm happy that happened to me when it happened to me, and not now at 40, where, I learned quickly, like, just don't take any of this for granted. You have no idea how fast things could change. I mean, look how much the space changes every day, every week
Yes.
already. It's certainly every year. So, I think what we didn't do through this growth period was take anything for granted. It was always like, hey, how can we do this better? Or, okay, things look good right now, but look at all this stuff that's probably coming down the pike. Like, how are we going to handle that? It wasn't just like, oh, we'll figure it out, and like, there is still always a sense of, like, both sort of the startup feel. So we're very nimble and agile, as well as just a high level of healthy fear, and so I think that's served us very well as an organization through some of these periods of what one might look at as being, success or growth or positive performance as an organization, and not just financially, but reputationally and organizationally and maturity, and just across all dimensions of, just like you as a human, and in how you try to evolve in both your health and your spirit and your fitness, and in your if you have a religious practice, or as a man or as a wife to your spouse, just in all those things, as a father or mother. I don't look at it a whole lot different than how we try to treat business.
Yeah. And the well said, man. I think I love how you describe the how you have to look at your business holistically, and also look at, a baby, like a baby, an infant, and how it's going, and how much attention it needs, for you to really understand where it can go and where it can grow, right? And so the pendulum is always moving in one direction, right? It's not staying still. It's that there's a swing in either direction where you have to pay more attention to, and be able to have that mentality and chemistry with your team, which we're going to talk about, the people being so critical. I know. And so actually that's a good thought. Like, what is your, now that you're 2024 from 2018, where's your mission, and kind of with QuoteVelocity?
So if we had to sort of look at high level as like a general mission statement, and it's funny because I worked on this last year, and I thought about it, and these things I do think change over time. I think core values and virtues, they it isn't that you sort of, I think that certain things become more important as the company grows, that you don't, so what's really important today may change over time fundamentally. And when I think of like a general mission statement for the organization, like I've always loved when someone asks Elon, like, what's the purpose of Tesla? I know, of course, he gives a great answer. It's like listening to Peterson, but he always says, Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And like, I think that's very cool because he doesn't say like to be the leader in, or he doesn't reference like like, you know what I mean? Like the ego
Yes.
doesn't really, that it's more like it's actually very selfless, and it's
Yeah.
very cool. When I've heard him say it, I'm like, that's just an interesting approach. It shows that he's sort of looking at this from a higher level. In our particular case, as an organization and what we do, I would say that it's truly to ethically and scalably drive consumer acquisition for sustainable growth. And so in whatever domain we may find ourselves in, which I'm sure over time may evolve, we're
Right.
certainly working in additional verticals now, and we're exploring, a lot more than perhaps we would have 2 years ago. But if you think about that, it's like, okay, so if you unpacked it to ethically, well, that's kind of obvious because it's really hard to grow a company doing things the wrong way beyond a certain point. And I understand, like, we're all performance marketers. At the end of the day, we're doing our best to achieve a result. But you have to kind of evolve past the expediency factor of just wanting quick results and very high margins. Like you have to kind of look forward and say, is this the behavior of an organization that's worth several hundred million or a billion? Like, would they do this, right? And I do think people will take risks early on in the development and in the growth of their company that they won't later. I think that's pretty typical. Anybody who says otherwise has never built a company. But I think that the faster you can get there, the better. So, we look at to ethically and scalably. I don't think that anything, we're looking to drive a lot of impact. So that side of the business is important. So, having high growth initiatives is critical. To drive consumer acquisition is simply what we do. And then for sustainable growth, like our partners they don't want a team that's going to come on board to assist with driving, call volume or driving them with prospects if they don't see that there's an opportunity for this relationship to significantly grow. And I think that, so by and large, when we sort of look at us as our mission, like those are the dimensions and areas that I think are important to us by and large.
For walking us through that. That's really cool how you've gone about like building that out for you and the team. And I like your approach there. I think it's great. And I think the world right in recognizes your success, and you've always what's always humbled me when meeting with you is how much you have appreciation for the people surrounding you, your team. You, as soon as you got recognized for being a finalist for Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year, you took to LinkedIn and your immediate. I remember because I commented. You said, "Hey, I wouldn't be here without my team." And thank you so much for the support and what we've built today. So talk through that a little bit, man. First of all, congratulations being a finalist.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly owe that first and foremost to my family, to God. I prayed, and I think I wrote this. I like when things were not going good, especially it like, dude, I begged. Like, I was like, please help me build a great team, help me create a great company, help guide me to do the right thing here. So, and again, going back to why I don't take any of this for granted, I realize how fast it could be snatched away from me. So, it sort of starts there, and then just the team in general. It's hard, to receive these awards or to be recognized for these things because I would like to just kind of bring everybody on stage with me, and like they've they all put their trust in me. Everybody who we brought in is amazing at what they do. Like they could have gone anywhere else, but they didn't. They came here. And they came here even when we were not doing well. Like I made this point about Melissa when I posted about her, but like we were, there was activity, there was growth, there was some momentum, but we weren't doing that well. Like she could have
Yeah.
easily gone, that would have been far more secure. And that was not in the sort of, in the kind of chaotic early growth startup, negative financial performance scenario that we were in.
Yeah.
And I told her the truth. I mean, I told her like, look, this is where we're at. These are the things that we have going on. And I was afraid she wasn't going to come on board. And she had been talked about so highly by so many people. But
Yeah,
she
we
did.
lost her at DMS. She was, but that's our fault. We couldn't give her enough opportunity to stay there. And so I'm so happy that it worked out to where, I mean, you put a great post about her.
Yeah, she's incredible. And she joined, and Rich came on, and Joe came on board, and just the whole everybody that's involved within their, the media team, the engineers that have come on board that have been critical, that never get the credit that they deserve for the amount of work that they do. The whole administrative team, like I wouldn't be able to function without, and I say this a lot, like without the women in our organization that kind of help provide like a degree, and I really mean this, with like a degree of, I call it like professional warmth. Like they know how to
Yeah,
calculate the egos of the men in the company and
that's
and
great.
part and work around things. And I can't really explain it, but they've all been incredible. They have been incredible, and none of this would have happened without them. We would be a bunch of dudes trying to just trying not to bump heads every day. Like it just it's just the amount of, and their aptitude for seeing things, and really the result of that recognition is from all of these people. So it's hard sometimes because I don't
Yeah.
want to take all that credit, and I understand and I get it because I'm sort of the face of the company. I get
Yes.
all that. I know and I understand that, but I don't, it's hard sometimes because I want to like parse it off to them. It's almost like, yeah. And so and then even being recognized as a finalist, when I got there, I looked at the other finalists, and then we got interviewed, and and like everybody goes in there and they're like, this is why you should choose me, sort of, right? Like that's kind of like the
Yeah.
interview got, we were like 20 finalists or whatever we were from the whole state. And then they interview you and you're kind of talking about yourself. And
Yeah.
so when I went into one of the interviews, because they put you through two separate interviews, I was like, let me explain why you shouldn't choose me. Like
Wow.
you have, out of all of us, you have a man who is running an ABA center, like a network for uh, ABAs for autistic children.
Mhm.
And like this guy built an incredible network of these ABA centers that treat these kids. And it's grown really fast. And then you have a woman who was like, she's the youngest Black woman to ever have a product line in Sephora. So like put the numbers aside, put everything else aside. And like if you look at, and I told them, I'm like, what I'm looking for in life is what are the positive second and third order effects of whatever whatever we're kind of dealing with or whatever is occurring here. And I'm like, okay, if we just think about this, let's say I receive it, great. It's amazing. I'm deeply grateful. Again, it looks beautiful on my wall. I could always talk about it. It's a great piece of PR, whatever. But like, if this guy gets it, like for the impact that he's had on these kids, it's so much more. Like I don't know that I could deliver that level of impact by receiving this. But if he did, for what he's done, it's like I could justify it better.
Yeah.
And for this woman who I don't know what percentage of young Black women start businesses, but I don't imagine it's very high. And so the impact that she can have by receiving that and sharing that with other young Black women is so much greater than for me to get it. And it was like hard not to, so I don't know how they're going to take it. I don't know that's ever
Yes.
happened. Or honestly, like I don't know if they've ever had somebody do that. And I didn't do it to be altruistic. I did it to be honest, because
Yeah.
they put us, they're asking you, how do you run your business? And how do you, your revenue and your this and your that. And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, I want this to net out well for whatever the outcome is. Like, I don't particularly need this. I want it to work best for whomever receives it. And so all the more reason why, like, when I'm recognized for these things, it's very hard because I want my whole team there on stage, really, because I'm a team member. Yes, I lead the organization, but I lead it very much by also collaborating with different team leads and asking them, what would you do in this scenario, or how would you treat this situation? And it isn't like it's always my decision. I mean, I very much think that we've adopted, either by design or by just, sort of Ray Dalio's approach to running things, which is sort of, who's the most believable person who has achieved a positive outcome in this area or dealing with this problem. And that's how we treat things. It's not like a top-down thing. We don't run this like some weird, so bureaucracy, right? Like, we run it more horizontal, where everybody kind of contributes and we look for patterns. Like, hey, when he said this, or when she said that, or when he or she made this decision, consistently they're right. Like, I'm not going to override that. I don't care about my title. Like, we need a good outcome here. So, like, on this front, it was I was deeply grateful. And again, when I think of that, I think of the team, but I also sat with them and I was just like, if you like, there's other people here that have delivered incredible value that probably deserve it more than I do. So, we'll see. It's actually in a week. It's the 14th that we go in. It's actually right here in Boca that they have it.
Yeah, I mean, Florida is such a great, place for entrepreneurs. I mean, it's one of the largest populated states, so you're going to run into some really amazing stories, and I've never seen that approach before. But I love your approach to just how you run your business, and also how, like, you're appreciating other stories around you from, from such a great community. Because it's really, it puts everything into perspective. And I think, going back to what you said about the women within your organization, I love that you're helping contribute to, I'm an advisor to Link Unite. And what I've continuing to see, in a hopeful positive trend that is more women are being empowered to grow within performance marketing, and not, and take leadership roles. And because, like, we can learn so much from, stop being male domination and tell women what to do. Is like, we can listen more and understand that perspective, and how they can actually put us more in a place of where we can all be communicating better and effectively. And so it's great to see that that's happening within your organization. I love Melissa, and I'm glad that she's working out really well with you. And it's like you said, it didn't come easy out of the gate. So you guys fought through some of the challenges, which is awesome. So
Hard.
I'm going to shift for a second too, because I encourage anybody who follow Manny on LinkedIn. He shares some amazing stories and content. Always very, very good reception for what he's going to share. Even shared something about the flag last week. So I encourage you to go back and check that out. But at the ACA summit, which, it coincided with the Medicare conference and also LeadsCon, it was a very busy week. You shared I don't know what the question that was answered to you, but I'm going to read the answer. And again, I encourage people to go watch the videos. Don't forget about your family, your children, your mental and physical health. Don't let everything else that matters to you go evaporating into the fog. Like, for me, like, I've never heard that on a panel, because I'm not saying all panels are transactional, but it's very, formulaic. And it took me off guard when I heard that, because it's awesome words of wisdom. People, I think, watching this can see you see how caring of an individual you are. But yeah, let's talk about that and your leadership style and why that's so important to you.
So the ACA panel was on how to double or triple your ACA book of business. So I was brought on by Arthur and the team to moderate the panel, and I was super grateful that they asked me to, because we do, we're in the ACA space, but not on a very large scale.
Right.
And I personally hadn't built an ACA book of business, so I was like, "Are you sure that you want me to speak on this?" And they were like, "No, we want you to just help kind of DJ it and moderate it. But what I realized was like the entire conversation obviously was about growth, like you know, how to, and I think all the panelists did an amazing job at answering the questions. They, you know, the focus was high growth, how to manage people, or how are you scaling different parts of the business, and then evaluating lead vendors and all different stuff. So this whole conversation is about growing. And I was watching the confidence monitor as the time was going down, and I knew we only had like a minute and a half left. And I was like, you know, what I basically was trying to explain to everyone was, when there was a study done where they took like they took these people and they put them in front of a television, and you can look this up on YouTube. And now that I tell you, you're going to see it, but if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't see it. What they do is they have people juggling a ball or passing a ball back and forth, like a group of people. And in the middle of they tell you, keep your eye on the ball, or keep your eye on a certain color on the ball. And so you're supposed to watch what's happening on this screen. And in the middle of it, there's somebody in a costume that's dressed up like a bear or a gorilla that just kind of walks across the screen. So after this segment ends, they say to you, what did you see? Or count how many times the ball's passed, something like that. Okay, the ball was passed 3 times. Okay, did you see anything weird? And everybody's like, no. So like very high majority of people don't see this person in a costume literally come across the screen. You can find it on YouTube. Yeah, it's a really, really interesting psychology study. And what it tells you is, when you're that focused on something right in front of your face can be going on and you won't see it. That something could be your family, like fucking really fast. And you know, like I know exactly what it feels like to feel all of the whole scope of emotion, of excitement of starting a business, to fear that it isn't going to survive, to like the thrill of things working, to the chaotic sense that it's all going to end, and everything in between, and especially in the early days. And what, you know, for me, that depth of focus came at the cost that I wasn't paying attention to things that were really important. And you know, in some ways still affect us. And you know, the like it, when I see people starting it, this is why I always try to encourage people to start a business at a young age. Like, I would try to start really young, before you have all the obligations that come on top of you. And if you're at the point where you already have a family, or even just your friends, the people who've been there for you, now you're ignoring them because you're just working. Like, you have to become exceptionally dialed in on ensuring that you spend time with those people through this process. Now, I will also, on the flip side of that, say you have to accept the reality that for you to get this thing from here to here is going to take a lot of work. And, you know, people ask, you know, talk about balance. I don't really know how much balance there is, as much as there is just integration, and really ensuring that, again, you're kind of looking at everything, you're looking at the people and things that are important to you. And so I didn't ever really miss training, because I knew that I had to work out in order to stay focused. Because if I don't train in the mornings, or in the evenings, at least, typically in the mornings, like, I just feel like my day's shot. Like, it's very hard for me to get my bearings going. Like, I've just always lived that way. But sometimes that came at a cost, that I get up at 5:30, I'm reading, I'm journaling, I'm praying, I'm doing whatever I'm doing, I'm checking emails, I'm hitting the gym, I'm getting to the office, I'm not getting home till 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And that went on for a long time. And I don't mean Monday through Friday. I don't mean maybe some Saturdays. I don't mean possibly on Sunday. I mean every day. Like, maybe sometimes on a Sunday it would be like a 10-hour day, but for a long time. And I just don't want for anyone to be put in a position where they've worked very hard to get somewhere at the expense of the health of their marriage or the health of their family. And like, it should seem obvious. And when you're just thinking about survival, this will begin to it'll distance itself from your mind because you're just thinking about, I need this thing to work. And when I started QV, I was doing well. It wasn't like we weren't. So I stepped away from what I was doing to start this. So there was regret. There was a sense of like, what if this doesn't work? And I just left all this. Um, and I can elaborate on this in a bit, but that also created an issue because I was still kind of holding on to something from before that maybe I should go back to, right? Like that starts to really mess with you. And so all these things just kept me not focused on home. And certainly my mental health took a hit in general. And I look at it in some ways like, we should be able to cope with these things. This is the path we decided. And and then I always do look at the broader, you look across the world, like there's people getting bombed that are innocent in other countries. There's all kinds of bad shit going on,
Yeah.
So it's like I should be able to deal with this much better than I am. So then there was just a constant mental battle. But yeah, like I feel like you're right. At these panels, I think people try to convey value, although a lot of times they're very surface level and people can't really take a lot from it. And I actually got a lot of responses on that privately sent to me via email. And yeah. And I think like in these talks, we always, I don't want to lose like the human element. Like we're all still just people and we're dealing with shit and we're trying to navigate this world in a really fast and efficient way. And it's just very easy to lose sight of these things. And I'd love for that to not happen to more people. And I can only touch so many, but to those that I have in my proximity or through this node that I am in this network, I would like for them to not make the same mistake if possible.
That's I can relate too, man. By the way, I in 2019 I was on planes almost every week, and I thought I was a good father, and I was health wise not good, eating really shitty, traveling, not working out, and my wife and I probably were this close to getting a divorce, and I thought, and my kids are relatively older, so I just thought that I was like being a good dad and just being the likable dad. And the pandemic hit, and it was actually a silver lining for me to know that I could be as effective as possible from home, but actually be a dad, like be part of whatever challenges they're facing, be present with my wife, help her through sobriety. Like there was just so much that transformed within my life and achieved
Oh,
success now through my business today, right? So it's just like you're describing to everybody in that room and now on through video, like just like you said, just being the reality of life. If you want to achieve growth, like that's great and amazing, which we all want, but you are going to, and if you don't take look at what's in front of you, like you're saying, you're not gonna be happy when you get up here on the growth side, or maybe you won't achieve that because you didn't focus on what's here. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
of course, and I think having a supportive, if you are in a situation where you have a husband or a spouse or a wife, or I think that having like their support could be everything. Like
Yeah.
there were a number of times where I'm like, I came home and I'm like, this isn't gonna work, and my wife was like, you're gonna be good, and I to this day I thank her for that, for keeping my head straight.
Amen.
And I think that having great people, my brother was amazing, but having great team members helped a lot. And I do think journaling is man, I like writing your thoughts down on paper. It just does something where it just pulls it from your brain and it lays it on ink. And it's
Yeah.
like, just takes some of that noise in your head and lets you just defer it to this piece of paper. And what's crazy is you can come back years later and read where you were at. And it's insane to see like how either broken you were, or how egotistical you were, or
Yeah.
whatever emotions you might have been going through at that time, and then look at it years later. Like I could look back to 2018, 2019, I could see all my conversations with myself, and in like just writing everything down, and these are the things bother me, these are the things I'm fearful of, and you come and realize later, like when you're going through just the life cycle of a business, like some of the things that you think are most important really end up being somewhat insignificant, and vice versa. But yeah, and I'm sorry to hear that
No, no.
but it's great to see how it how it turned around and how, in
Thank
a
you.
weird way, the pandemic ended up
Yes.
almost
Yes,
like
absolutely.
amazing. That's amazing. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, because of course and like you said, all the things that are going around in the world and you see in the news, and we all see the effects of the pandemic. Of course, we lost loved ones and so forth and shut down a lot of businesses, but that was one positive for me. Um, Speaking of growth, by the way, that plaque behind you, not a plaque, that's a freaking monstrosity.
You
You
know,
were
it's
the
huge. It almost didn't fit in my car. I need to hang it though. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, he's like quite literally yelling at me. He's like, "You come get this thing out of my house."
awesome.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah,
Uh,
we have the other on the wall over there, but it's been,
yeah.
yeah, it was see that.
Adam
Yeah.
and Harrison. So for those folks out there, from Ringba, the founders of Ringba created a Go Club, which is there's certain requirements that you have to achieve in a call campaign to hit a Go Club. And I think the first major milestone is 10 million in a campaign, and then I think it's a million, and then 10 million, and then and so Manny achieved that. But the award behind him is the first $100 million call campaign. Um, which to me, and I don't have any way to verify this, but I do think that that's the largest performance mark. And I've been doing this for 20 some years. I think that's the largest performance marketing call campaign that I've ever seen to date. So has that sunk in at all for you and the team, your amazing team, like that you guys have created the largest call campaign in the history of performance marketing?
So we might have to try to verify that, but he had it happen. He texted me and he's like, "Hey, you just hit this milestone. Um, I think it's important that we have like a podcast that's associated with it, so you can kind of like." And so we had done one in 2019.
Right.
Um, so he'd been asking to do a follow up, but he's like, "Now you really need to come in because this
Yes.
is like worth sharing." Yeah. Um, I think when I think of like just the growth in general, I look at like all just again kind of all the excitement, all the pain, all the difficulty, all the navigating of, and again, we're not in like, I think if we were in like home services or some other verticals, or maybe there isn't quite as much regulatory pressure, it'd be different. I mean,
Yeah,
this is a vertical to do correctly. It really
absolutely.
is pretty hard. So, I think when I see these things, or again, deeply blessed, incredible team. I think us having the right mental framework has been really important. But yeah, kind of looking at everything behind it, I think a lot of this is the result of personal development of the team. So our, you know, our UK team is how they behave as individuals, sort of their general moral fiber, just who they are. The entire leadership team here, operations, really everything from HR through accounting to business development, Matt and the team and others. Just when I see these and I see numbers and I see performance and I see results, it's like it's it's a blessing and I'm grateful. But I also know in my heart, like, it's not a huge surprise because of how serious these people treat themselves and take
Yeah.
themselves as far as personal development seriously. Melissa has, this might not be the response that people are expecting, but like that is a result of that. Like it's about reading and all the other elements that go into the your personal development that end up reflecting in your organization, which really is sort of just an extension of you. So when I think of like, Matt came in, we were hiring for business development. And just so people know, like our business development team is me, Rich, and Matt. Like that's sales. And so Matt came in and he walks in, this guy's 6'6", and I'm like, what the hell? And he comes in, and so I already looked at his resume, and then he sits down, he tells me he's got a degree in insurance. Like he's the only kid in the United States of America that actually went to college for insurance. Like that's a thing you could do. I had no idea. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? So then I don't really care about all that. I could tell within 5 minutes he's got life to him. He's got just he speaks well and he seems very genuine. And so I'm like, all right, I don't forget about career wise. I already looked everything over and he's got a degree in insurance. So I'm like, this is already like just weird. But then I asked him, I'm like, what do you do on your spare time? Like, what do you into? Um, and he tells me, he goes, well, I'm doing this thing right now called 75 hard. So 75 hard is a really a mental fitness thing more than it is physical. That was started by Andy Frisella, who's been sort of a mentor of mine for years. He runs First Form and leads the Arate Syndicate, which I'm a member of. Actually, I'll be in St. Louis with them in a few weeks. And the moment he told me that, I knew if he's fine. And I said, how far are you in? And he was like 30 or 40 days into it or whatever it was. So 75 hard is 75 days straight of you train every day, twice a day. One of the workouts has to be outdoors. There's like a few sort of metrics for it. You have to read X amount of pages. And so there's this whole thing that you follow. And the second he said that, I knew like this guy has discipline. He takes his personal development very serious. He has to be somewhat well organized, because when you have to do all these things in a day, like your priorities shift. Like now I have to train twice. Like training once is hard for most people. Training twice is almost not even realistic. So you
Yeah.
find yourself midnight trying to get your last hour of the day in if you have to get your outdoor
Yeah.
workout in. There's just a whole framework for it. I'd recommend people look at it and follow it, and don't lie to themselves about it, but you have to follow a diet. Like it's
Yeah.
hard. It's very hard to do correctly. But it teaches you how to organize your day. So why this all comes full circle is because on one hand, I'm like, this is unbelievable. I remember what it felt like, again, begging for God to help me build a great company. But on the other hand, I'm like, these people are unbelievable at what they do. So I wouldn't expect anything different. So I kind of sit in between this equilibrium of,
Yeah.
again, like very deep gratitude, but also a sense of not what I would call ego, but just like an expectation of excellent results from excellent people, if that makes sense. So it was amazing and it made me very happy. But like I also felt as though the team had earned that based on the amount of hard work that they've put into this company. And again, that's through every organization or every department in this organization. I mean, we hire very slow here, very slowly. But we take we have like a zero attrition rate. There's nobody leaves. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just grateful, right? Super grateful. And Adam and Harrison and the team at Ringba have been crucial. I mean, like their technology has been, we wouldn't have gotten here. Like it's been unbelievably effective and has been just like an element in our DNA of our organization and how we can operate and the things we could do programmatically. And it's like, I know that there's other software out there and I get all that, but for us, this is what's worked well.
Yeah.
And when we've recommended their way, it's worked very well. And so, yeah, I'm deeply grateful to them and for what they've built here to help us.
I can't wait to see you get the 250 and the 500 and one B. I think you're absolutely right. Like their tech stack, when you know you're working with a company that is, I think 60 or 70% developers, and they're helping lead the next chapter, and they're always thinking ahead, right? Whether they built the RTB, whether they've built their exchange, right? They're always thinking ahead of what we need to do and be thought leaders to help us continue to grow. But you just again gave such amazing credit to all the support around you to and the culture that you've built to get to that milestone. But I'm glad that you've taken a moment to appreciate it, because and it's nice to see that, because it's nice to stop and recognize that you have created probably the largest call campaign in the history of performance marketing. But and to dude, you even said it too. It's not like you're in such a category that has looser regulations. Ethically, you've done everything right. We talked about that, earlier, and the team can stand behind that. But we are, as an industry too, about to face some regulatory challenges, or at least we see that ahead of us with the one-to-one consent from the FCC, and then also CMS. So I'm going to ask you just your general, you and I are not attorneys. We're not giving legal advice out here, but generally, how are you working through some of the, the CMS stuff, as well as the one-to-one consent, which is kicking in at the end of January?
So the CMS one, which is from what we understand, actually a bit easier to navigate due to certain exceptions related to transferring beneficiaries if they provide consent on the phone. So to take a step back, I think what's important here is that people like, we are a fully vertically integrated lead generation team, consumer acquisition team. Like we don't really, for the most part, our contact centers entirely, they're employees. I mean, these are QV employees, right? We don't, there isn't really a very large BPO footprint. We generate all of our own data from very insurance specific paths. So it isn't like we're running these sort of ambiguous sweepstakes type offers where the beneficiaries really know what they're opting into, and then you're having to try to get some sort of consent on the phone or some other weirdness. So, and we don't buy data, so we're not aggregating from a third party source that may or may not have had certain things done correctly. Like everything is vertically integrated, which also means we're responsible for everything. So to be clear, we can't point the finger, right? So like, whereas many times in this space, if something goes wrong, it's like, well, it came from there, they did it. Like we don't have the luxury of that. Like so the fact that we control and we're fully vertically integrated means that we bear the entire burden and the entire responsibility of what this beneficiary saw, what they may have experienced throughout the entire flow and path and everything until we guide them to an insurance partner, agency or carrier. For us, what we see CMS suggesting or proposing here, and what's going into effect, should not largely affect us because we are driving insurance specific ads to insurance specific landers. We are calling them internally ourselves, and then we're receiving consent. Now, again, we're not attorneys, but from what I understand, there is an exception to where we should be able to transfer that beneficiary or that consumer to another TPMO, in this case for Medicare, such that we receive their consent on the phone. But again, when that lead is generated, that consumer, they know exactly who's going to call them, and we're the ones that are calling them. We're the ones providing the service, and then we're getting their consent for a transfer. So to that end, the CMS side should be manageable. The FCC side for us is far more confusing, and I think it is for a lot of attorneys. We've consulted with who we know are really all of the best attorneys in the space that are involved in this. We work obviously with Eric Troutman team. And everybody, they're amazing. We with GT, work with Greenberg Charig as well, quite closely on a lot of fronts, especially when it comes to certain compliance related aspects and lawsuits against companies. Maybe not after, but so the FCC side looks a bit more confusing, specifically in who is the end service provider. Right. So language is sort of, what they're looking for is they want, and to take a step back, like, I don't think, like, the consumer experience in filling out a form online for the most part is pretty horrendous. Like, so I don't entirely disagree with their focus in trying to take some control of this just chaotic mess of data going everywhere, being called that are unrelated to what so I get it. Like I do get it. Step back to the same thing. Like, would you want your grandmother to fill out most Medicare forms online or certain co-reg forms? Like I personally wouldn't. But, and it's not to knock, it's just, it's bad, and they're trying to control it, or they're at least trying to take some hold of it. And I don't think it's a bad idea. Where I think it's gotten really weird is the FCC's sort of the way that they've stated is that the end service provider has to be listed on your consent form. Who is that? Like, is it your agency partner? Is it the carrier that the agency may place that beneficiary with? Like, dude, it gets like weird fast.
It gets very tricky.
And the worst part of that is if it is carrier specific, well, then that goes totally against what CMS is trying to do, which is to try to help the smaller carriers gain a little bit of market share, because now nobody's going to list. You know where this is going, right? Exactly. So like everybody's going to list the largest carriers. And so you're really going to just, and because
the little guy gets crushed.
And lead gen so much activity, whether people want it or not, it's going to for a long time. It drives so much activity in the Medicare space and just in the broader insurance space. So like, where does this language really land? So I think that's been the on the FCC side, the most difficult part is really understanding who is the end service provider. Like
Yeah.
we're, I mean, we're providing a service. Like, could it be us? Could it not? Like, how does that is for us a bit
So
more difficult to navigate. Yeah, and that's really in January, right? So we
yeah,
need to
it's in
move on.
January.
And
You're
I
right, man. The small businesses and the agencies are like, as my good friend Peter Vitale, he's the CEO of Lead Clinic. He calls them the backbone of America, right? The businesses that, and so we don't want to see them suffer because you're forced to list all the big carriers, right? It's like, okay, so or the multi-carrier, the agencies that are representing and placing those deals. So I did I left a reach meeting, Responsible Enterprise Against Consumer Harassment, Eric's group, and he is going to work on publishing standards because I think that's going to help set the tone for how we all carry on the call center environment. But it's still, like I said, we're already in June. We got to see some of
yeah,
this come into play soon, but more to come there, as I'm sure you and I
I
will
don't,
evolve and learn together.
I hope people know, like, I don't, yeah, there's certainly nothing I would share just to help the viewers on any front possible. I mean,
Yeah,
we consult a lot with on the CMS side with Helene, who we absolutely adore, and she's been amazing. She's been a huge asset to the space. She spoke
yeah,
at Medic. She's like, I always refer to her as our compliance godmother. We've been working with her since, like, 2020, 2021. And she's been unbelievable. So, and I've introduced her to what you would consider competitors, but at the end of the day, like, I want the space to be healthy. I'm not worried about someone else's, I'm not worried about competition so much as I'm worried about the space behaving in a way that allows it to continue to grow instead of, run around like a bunch of cowboys. So there isn't anything additional that I really know that I could share, or I would if I thought it could just
yeah,
help the community in general. Yeah, like I said, I think CMS it looks to be manageable, and I don't think there's anything too crazy there. The FCC side, I just think there's a lot more up
yeah,
for interpretation that leaves it
yeah,
sort of like, I don't really know how they really want things done. And then just I'll end on, it's not even just
yeah.
it's the aggressive litigious, nature of to the TCPA side, and then bleeding over into the FCC if attorneys see an opportunity due to a lack of interpretation that we're actually genuinely trying to figure out. Like, it's just, it's like, so yeah, so it's that's really our concern as well. We don't want people, trying to file suits for things that are, yeah, it's an aggressive area, unfortunately, for this industry
Yeah,
of aggressive TCPA. I mean, even on entities that are doing the right thing, right? So
absolutely. Um, we're gonna close out here in a little bit because I really appreciate all the time you spent with me, but I want to talk about some adversity that when I first met you, um, you know, there was unfortunately a big Medicare agency that was buying a lot of leads at the end of 2022, a lot of calls, and stiffed a lot of brothers and sisters, and did not pay their bills, and left a lot of businesses, especially during the holidays, coming out of the holidays, just
yeah.
being able to not pay their staff, pay their media, really crushed a lot of our friends. And we all faced some blows throughout the space. This was a big blow. This was a really big blow, and you guys took a big hit. And some people at that point, like, it could have been your 2008 moment, right? It would have been like, shit, this is it. Like, I'm fucked. I'm done. Like, how did you work through that, dude? How did you work through that?
Okay, so and I spent a lot of time thinking about this, although I wish I didn't have to. So we survived because and this is we survived because we're very responsible in how we run the business. We do not treat this company like an excuse to throw bottles of champagne at the wall or crash Bentleys into each other. Like, we actually treat this like a real company, which means the company is a real, and we're bootstrapped, right? And there's no
Yeah,
outside funding, but
amazing.
foremost, we survived because we had the financial means to do so, which just came from just being responsible business
Yeah,
owners. You kind of go back to the comments earlier about, running a business like a teenager and becoming sort of, egotistical or thinking you're a magician when you're not. And then, pulling all the resources, the financial resources out of the organization to live a certain way and to sort of show off. and then finding yourself in a situation like this, which would have wiped us out. So we were in a financial situation where we could sustain that sort of hit and then move forward. We, you know, we learned a lot by way of understanding risk better, right? Obviously. And, you know, in hindsight, everybody says, why would you extend this much credit, or why would you? So you have to understand, and I had a conversation with a very good friend recently who's going through a tough time, and he lost, you know, $5 million on something, and he's handling it very well. But what I said to his is, I was like, if you're running a business and you're making the business is doing 10 grand a week, and you lose 500 or you lose 1,000, that's sort of your relative pain point, right? Or maybe you lose half of it, whatever it looks like. You're running a business that's doing, you know, $500,000 a month. Your hits are probably not going to be $1,000 or $5,000. They're probably going to be like 25 or 30. Like, you just, the way that you now, like, you're just in a different sandbox. Well, when you're doing 9 figures a year, your hits are not going to be 300 grand or 400 grand. Maybe they will. And the best that you could do is the best that you could do to mitigate that risk. We certainly could have done a better job. And I take full responsibility for that. Obviously, right? I mean, that really lands on my shoulders. And what probably was the most, I would almost say, difficult part of that is I expected more blowback from the team, and everybody handled it. And you got to understand, you know, especially at the time, the way everything is, the team the biggest hit there are going to be the teams that benefit from the output in that particular way, if you will.
Yeah.
Sort of the marketing side or what have you. And the teams that were most affected by it, they basically looked at it, and it was right before the holidays, and they had worked their asses off the entire AP, which essentially now was completely drained.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, how do we just make sure this doesn't happen again? And like, how do we move forward? And like, it's almost like if they would have came at me with fire, I would have expected it. And probably, because it's my responsibility to make sure that we're getting paid, I probably would have felt like, okay, I deserve this. It's good that I'm eating this. But the fact that they did not, that they were just like, they did not do that. And they were very humble about it. They understood that this is just a reality that we're all facing, and how do we move past it? Dude, it broke me down. Like not in front of them, but
I know. I connected with you on it. I just felt so fucking bad, dude.
It just chopped me up, because I was like, they just, you know, and particularly, you know, the teams affected are like, they just handled it like men. Like, they were just, and like, you know, which was why we had to fight the lawsuit, because I'm like, I'm not going to go down like this. Like, this is not going to happen. And it's all public. You could see it still. I mean, we're still a thing. We did not let that. I won't. Like, I just, you know, and I said, I was like, there's no way I could roll over like that. I can't do. Like, show that I'm going to put up a fight here, if for no reason other than the reality that this was so wrong, and it was so much. And I need them to know that I have their back, and that I'm not going to lay down no matter how long it takes. And it's cost us a lot. So, but they handled it so well. And I'll never forget that. I will never forget that. Wherever this company, whatever the future, you know, holds, and to the extent that I could make sure that this team is more than taken care of, I absolutely will, because they dealt with it, and they did not, nobody complained. I couldn't, Joey, I couldn't fucking believe it. Like,
no, I know.
You
know why they handled it so well? You know why I handled it so? Because of you. It's because you leader, like I was saying to your leaders lead, and you, as much as you put such an amazing group together and built this culture and chemistry, when you face a challenge like that, you become stronger. But they look up. They look to the guy who's going to help keep their confidence that, you know, because we are such a big business, we're probably going to take the biggest hit here. But guys, like, we're going to learn through this. We're going to move through it. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to fight it because that's who we are. We're fighters, you know, and And dude, I'm so proud of you and the team for rallying through it, because I've seen so many people that can't get through it. So I
Yeah,
know,
it hurts me to know that there were others. I still to this day I've asked around. To my understanding, I spoke to I forgot who was at the time, but my understanding was there was a woman in this space who was running a business or who had kind of just gotten started, and she took like a $500,000 hit in that whole debacle,
yeah,
and lost like her business. And I don't know who that is. If anybody watching this knows who that is, I would like to know. Um,
yeah,
but
hopefully.
look, I went through it. Dave went through it, and we sort of,
Yeah,
and in a weird way, it kind of bonded some of the competitors closer, because it was like, look, man, at the end of the day, like, I want to beat you on the competitive landscape, but I don't want you to go out of business. Like
no,
I have a family. Like
yes,
you're have like I really truly don't want to see that. I really don't. And in
no,
fact, we've done a lot to try to help a lot of our competitors in a weird
yes,
way.
yes,
But I don't I don't want to see any of them go. I took absolutely no joy in that whatsoever to see that they took a hit in any way. Um,
yeah.
and so in a weird way, it did bond us a little bit. I mean, and it was a bizarre way for it to happen, but it was wrong. And I hope that those responsible that they feel it soon.
Yeah. Amen, brother. I want to end on a positive note here. And that, by the way, that is, to me, that winds up becoming a positive, because I've seen how you've responded since, and it's just been astonishing for you and the team. But, amazing leaders like you, again, you just discuss how important your team is to you, but you've already talked about God, your connection with God. You've talked about your routine, your workout. You talk about, journaling. Um, for you as a leader and as an individual and a family man, like, how do you what good advice do you have for someone who back in 2018 is Manny, who's getting ready to consider starting up a new business? And what advice do you have for him, man? Because you glow with this amazing energy, man. Like, everybody can see it. And I want you to be able to share any words of wisdom here that you can share with everybody.
Yeah, and we're talking early stage, like sort of what advice to give someone starting a
Anything.
business, or
It could be early stage, or it could be current, where they're just fighting a challenge in the business. And what could be regulatory. Like, you've already talked through a lot of it. So,
yeah.
like, I hope anybody that's listened today can learn from a lot of
So
life lessons that you've shared. But I think you touched on a lot. Is journaling, is that one thing? Because you just talked about it a little while ago, how you could go back and reference to where you were in 18 and 19, and you journaled. Is that one thing you would say is important for people to do, is to really journal and to
yeah,
get their
I
thoughts
think
out there on paper?
journaling. So if we sort of break this up, and I'll start with, I'll get to sort of what I would if I had just a single piece of advice for somebody starting a company, what that would be. Um, but kind of jumping into the middle here, if you're already kind of getting things going, and you've got, your company's it's evolved to some extent or what have you. Um, a few things. One, as expensive legal is, it's typically very useful. We've been saved several times by being told, like, this won't work well in a year from now, so start this now. Um, Hiring the right counsel, some of the obvious things, paying more for great talent. Like, people are very, like, that's an investment. It's not an expense. I don't know how else to say this. Like, your team is an investment. They're not an
Yes.
expense. So hiring great people will produce significantly more. And you kind of look at like the Netflix scenario. I don't know if everybody kind of knows, but this became like a case study. Netflix was going through some struggles, and then I don't remember if it was through '08. I have to go back, reference back to it, but and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but basically what they did was they cut like a third of the entire company, and they cut two-thirds. It was something dramatic, and they were like, Netflix almost died.
Yeah.
And what they found was that after they eliminated everyone almost, that the remaining team was significantly more efficient. Now, there's a lot of, could it be because they were just scared for losing their job, or what was it? But what they ended up finding was that by trimming all this, and by just having the best team members there was just everybody held themselves to a higher standard. And ideally, and now Netflix has a lot of things implemented where like every quarter the manager has to make a case for why they shouldn't fire like their team. Like it's a really bizarre, but it's helped them grow significantly. So if you could start that early on, which was why Melissa was so important to me, and Rich was, and Joe was, because I knew like these people are the best at what they do in their respective areas, and beyond. You know, like getting a great team together means everybody's elevated, like everybody's just. And then that goes into my next point, which is that your business will never exceed your personal development. If you think you're going to come here and behave a certain way and then walk out that door and be a piece of shit and somehow like this is going to grow, you're fucking delusional. And like if you don't think that how you carry yourself or how you behave as a man or as a woman outside the office has a deep impact on how that business is going to run, you're crazy. And your people will see it and they'll call you out on it. And they may not call you out on it, but they'll call you out on it by leaving. Like they'll feel it and they'll eventually leave. If you're running a business and it's a small business and you want it to stay small because you just that's all you want, I think that's fine and that's beautiful. But the problem with that is it's going to be really hard to bring ambitious people into your organization because they don't see a future for themselves. So you're going to be kind of stuck, right? Like there's just these nuances that I think that are important for people to think of. Just the mistake side, man, like, look, I'm not an academic. Like I grew up a regular dude who just worked hard. My parents worked really hard my whole life growing up. And like, I've made countless mistakes here. I literally, I think Ben Horowitz, and I mentioned this book on Adam's podcast where I mentioned the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Like if you're going through a rough patch, I would read material from other people who've gone through that. Like just be as resourceful as you can. And I know that it could sometimes feel like you're overwhelmed with all these different things, but I would try my best to gravitate towards whatever you need at that moment. I was going through a tough time not long ago, and my cousin Josie, who's our COO, she brought me the book He Leadeth Me, and she knew like that was what I needed at that time. And so I think, all those things considered, in whatever you're doing, just find the best at what that is, like the best. So I like to remain efficient in combatives, right? Whether it's with blades or with firearms or with my hands. Like I like to be a man who's capable of protecting his family and his friends and just the broader community. I don't get firearms instruction from somebody who just got their concealed carry permit. Like I go to the best people that I can possibly find that typically teach mostly military or a former military or former, so, and these are people who've been through it. And so your degree of education, you may pay a little bit more, but the amount of education you get and the delta there for, especially for how important that is unbelievable. I mentioned this on Adam's podcast. I wanted to take a boxing again. And I live close to Kill Cliff, which is like, it's a very well-respected, South Florida is like the Mecca for a lot of this. So I know Cali's got a ton of great fighters. I'm not knocking you guys, but we got something going on out here. So, dude, I emailed the whole gym, and typically you can't train at that gym unless you're a pro fighter. Like you pay out of your purse. But I begged the gym, like fighters, trainers, nobody would answer me. And finally, after like 3 or 4 months, someone answered me, and they took me in on just sort of private one-on-ones. But now I'm like surrounded by, Mike Chandler and all these other people these are pro fighters that like this is sort of who's in my proximity, or these are, and so it's just I do my best to surround myself with great people. So, and that goes with business too, and with the counsel that you look for, and the people that advise you, like all of that is important. My best advice to somebody starting a company, bar none, would be to burn the ships. When I started QuoteVelocity, as I mentioned to you before, I had the idea, I had like the notion that I could go back to what I was doing. And I didn't realize how much that held me back from doing what I needed to do here. And the more painful it got here, the more that I wanted to go back there, because you're a human and you're just trying to relieve this pain. And I almost did. And the best thing I ever did was leave myself no opportunity to go back. So I basically called them and I was like, I'm done. Like I'm done. I'm going to do this. And I made that commitment to my family, to my wife as well. Like, okay, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to make this thing work. And it wasn't until I did that, and of course the team came in and all these other things aligned, but if you give yourself a plan B, your whole life will turn into a plan B. Like that plan B is the same plan B that makes you hit snooze in the morning when you know you should be going to the gym, or makes you eat shit you're not supposed to eat because it's not part of your diet. Like it comes from the same place of like weakness. And so burn the fucking ships. If you leave yourself with literally no way out, you will end up finding a way through. You just will. It's just whether it's the universe or God or just your sheer will, it'll orient you through a direction to make this thing work. And it's very hard to do that when you have the idea that you can go back to something else. Well, I could lean on that, or oh, maybe I'll just go back to that. It makes it almost impossible to give every ounce and every cell in your body to this organism that you're trying to grow. And that's the best advice I could give to somebody starting a business.
It's clear you have not cut corners, my friend. You've paid up to surround yourself with amazing talent, with amazing advice and guidance, and everybody should burn the ships. You are such a special person, man. You absolutely have become what I've witnessed, a thought leader, a pioneer, someone will help us continue to guide performance marketing to the next level. And like you said a couple minutes ago, even you respect everybody around you, your competition, co-opetition.
Yeah.
You are truly an amazing human, Manny. And I thank you for coming on today, sharing your story with us. And I wish you and the team continued success.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, Joey.
Awesome.